Hello, and welcome to another Curmudgeon in the Cellar. Got a bunch of good things to talk about tonight. And all fired up, just got done watching BattleBots. Now, there's a game that I find fascinating. These guys spend tens of thousands of dollars on using cutting edge metals, having access to plasma cutters and stuff to do it, figuring out these incredibly expensive toys that they have hundreds of hours in just so they can go in 3 minutes and smash the shit out of each other. Who doesn't love that? I wish I had the money to do that. I guess that's today's version of jalopy racing. 30 years ago, guys got together, got a bunch of friends together, got a car and went and raced at the local track. Today, they build robots and beat the hell out of each other. I don't know if it's necessarily better. And, oh man, middle of the World Cup, some amazing matches have been played already. Some interesting upsets have been performed. Great. But we'll go to gaming now. And I have a question that was actually a question in response to the last episode. And by the way, if you're enjoying this, I hope you subscribed. And if not, why not? Anyway, first question was from, it was a question, pardon me, from the last episode. And it really caused me to think this through a little bit. And this won't be quite as off the top of my head as they sometimes are. The question was about using random treasure and monster tables back in the old days. Did I do it, or did I know anybody else that did it? Yes and yes, I did it. And I knew other people who did it. And I think it was an extremely common mistake when we were all brand new, neophyte, green DMs that were finding our way through. And that's what the rules originally said. If you had the first 3 books and followed them, then you rolled. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there was even an occasion where somehow or other you could have nothing in the room, but there could be a huge treasure. You just walk in and go, "Ooh, look at that!" The worst thing about those was when I built my first dungeon, I went through and I rolled for every room. Was there anything there? And I later joked, and today I say, it's all happening at the zoo, Simon and Garfunkel. We could have written, "Let's go killing at the zoo," because it was like every other door, there's something behind it and you kill it or whatever. And it was kind of ludicrous. There really wasn't a story behind the first several adventures we ran. It was really kind of jumping in up to the top of, not quite to the top of our boots, and figuring out what it was we were doing. And so, yes, there was a gross misuse of tables and charts, especially for treasure. And that led me to think about something else. When you have that ridiculous treasure that you just walk in and come out with, and you all come staggering out with sacks of silver, bags of gold or whatever, what's that do to your economy? So let's talk just for a minute about the economy of a D&D campaign. Let's talk about inflation. I was at the bank today. I asked for $50 in tens, and a couple of the tens were really raggedy. And I mentioned something about it. She goes, "Yeah, that's right. 10s are the new 5s. And I thought about that. Yeah, several years ago, 5s were really raggedy because that was the most handled bill. Now it's become the 10. That's inflation. Now, as an example, I set my campaign basis when I'm first starting out, something like you might find in an old Western town in the late 1870s, early 1880s, as far as prices. A good filling meal is 3 silvers, 30 cents. And then you go from there. If you're in the bar drinking or, whatever activities you are, room for the night, 50 cents. So you might get, dinner, breakfast in a room for a gold piece, $1. Now, prices are based on available currency, specie, 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 the tangible things that you bite determine if they're real. When there is little, one silver piece will buy, we'll say, a loaf of bread. A big, nice round thing of, nourishment for a day. Piece of cheese, you're home free. Glass of cider, 35, 45 coppers, 4, 5, 6 silver. That's a day. So now you're going to put a treasure in there that's going to have 65,000 pieces of gold in it. There's a lot of problems with that. In the old days, before I decided it was silly, you awarded experience points for finding treasure. Well, when you had that, granted, strange set of circumstances, pardon me, got to keep it wet. You have that strange set of circumstances where you walk in and find a huge stash of loot. That just upset your entire economy, because now you're coming back to wherever the village is, wherever it is that you have your base, and you're doing one of several things. You could be all paranoid and rented a room, and now you're arguing about who has to stay on duty, how you're going to work out the watches so that you don't get ripped off because you got all this loot here and nothing to do with it, nowhere to put it. Maybe maybe you're in a bigger place and you got something like Gringotts. That would be in a really big city with laws and everything. In my second campaign, the first real one that counted, I believe there was a merchant who locked stuff up in his extremely secure place and kept money for you. But all this money flooding into your economy, no matter the size of your city, is going to have an effect. And it's your job as a DM to suck as much of your players' money out of them as you possibly can without just outright stealing or ripping them off. But hey, what's to say what's stealing and what's ripping off? Because immediately prices go up. When something's scarce, one of them buys a lot. When something becomes less scarce, one of them buys less. I don't care if you're talking about pretty red moon rocks or you're talking about silver pieces. So you're going to have inflation. Lots of silver floating around. The silver begins to buy less and less. You have to use more and more to get the same thing. A shot, a good drink in your tavern where you go to get all your hooks or whatever might have been a silver piece, and all of a sudden it's 3 or 4, because after all, there's lots of silver around. It's like M, if you're an economist or you understand economics. I was supposedly licensed to teach high school economics, but never had to teach a economics specific course. They were one of the first ones that were dropped when schools had to start economizing. Anyway, so yeah, I used the charts and tables. I think a lot of us did in the very beginning, and then we realized we shot our foot off. The other problem with that, using the charts and tables, is stupid shit, stupid stuff. Game breakers end up there. I had a ring with wishes in it, 2 or 3 wishes in a beginning campaign because it came up. And when you're rolling as many rooms as we were rolling, you didn't think about stuff like, oh my God, what must this thing smell like? What do all these things eat that are lurking behind the doors waiting for the adventure to come in? What do they eat? That place must smell like the worst cat house in the Tesia Zoo on a 103-degree day. So charts and tables are good for a guideline, an idea, a really big treasure only after you defeat a really big monster or solve a really big puzzle or escape a really dire calamity. That's what it works. Now, as some of you may have seen, I was running out of ideas earlier in the week about what to talk about. Occasionally that happens. Yes, even I run out of ideas to talk about. So I said, okay, I'm throwing it open. And so here we go. And I printed these off in the order I got them. I won't necessarily name names, but I want to read them to you so whoever wrote will know who it was, because I just did a cut and paste. Have you ever considered having a book written about your time in the gaming industry? Well, a book, maybe a broadside. No, not realistically, no. As a matter of fact, I mentioned in a number of books, there's several movies, documentaries coming out in the next 6 to 24 months that I have extensive parts in, if you will, and being interviewed. So in various places, what I ended up doing will be recorded. If you had it to do all over again, what have you changed about the time you spent with TSR? I thought about this one long and hard. And what it was, I would have stayed more of Gary's friend and less of a TSR employee. Gary and I were great friends. When there was just the 3 or 4 of us, we all did everything together. We pitched in, we literally rubbed shoulders together, we were collating books and that. As we became bigger, did bigger projects, like I did William the Conqueror. We picked up the Pedal Throne. We were picking up this outside stuff. I became less, our time overlapped less and less. We were on different projects and stuff. And so we didn't grow apart. We just saw each other less. And I think that's probably my biggest mistake, because in so doing, I didn't see the insidious influence that the Blooms were having. And maybe because I'm not willing to believe the best of everybody, maybe I would have realized and could have warned him what incompetent idiots they were, as was later proved by what they did to the company and how they ran it into the shitter. All right. My best cribbage match. Well, Jay, it's not the one you're hoping I'm going to talk about. When I was in the Navy, and when I was deployed to the Gulf of Tonkin during the Vietnam War, when we were standing down, which meant the planes were out, because I worked whenever they were flying and I was off whenever they weren't. And we worked 12 on, 12 off, 12 on, 12 off. When we were in downtime, when all the maintenance had been completed, usually because all the planes were out flying that could fly, we played cards, and we played a 3M game called Acquire. We played Acquire a ton. Well, there was a guy in the squadron that was a really, really good card player. He was a big old fat sloppy lifer. He'd get up to E4 and he'd get drunk and stupid, and they'd bust him back to Seaman, and then he make it up to E5 and get busted back to E4, and he was almost ready to get out, and they were glad to see him go. But he was a hell of a card player, and he and I played a lot of cards. He taught me. I learned from him about a couple, 3 different card games. I learned how to read people. I learned how to figure out when playing pinochle what everybody was carrying, holding in their hand, and when they were down to 4 or 5 cards each. Hell of a good card player. And he and I were particularly good, well matched at cribbage. And we played cribbage so many times, and he'd win 2 out of 3, and I'd win 2 out of 3, and he'd win 2 out of 3, and I'd win 2 out of 3. So I don't know. I don't know why, but sometime after we left Hong Kong, we decided that we were going to have a cribbage contest, more like a volleyball score, and you had to win by so many. And I think we said we had to win by 2 or win by 3. All right. And okay. So whoever got 2 more wins or 3 more wins than the other guy won the thing. Well, it took 3.5 days to complete because, of course, there were times there we had to fly and fix airplanes and, do that Navy stuff and, kill commies. And then when we weren't fixing airplanes, getting ready to kill commies or watching them go off to kill commies, we were playing cards. And it took us 3.5 days. And I think we played 56 or 57 match games before I actually got the win. I don't know, 2 more than he had or 3 more than he had, something like that. 3.5 days. That was my most epic cribbage match. Now, there was another cribbage match a few years back at a convention out on the East Coast called Total Confusion. And for that cribbage match, we had agreed to play for charity. All the proceeds of the match went to charity. And I won. We had a lot of fun. We raised some money for charity. And I'll gladly do that, win or lose. I don't care. I'll play anybody for cribbage for a charity. No sweat. Next question. Okay. I'd love to know what you think about the current incarnation of Dragon Magazine in the online version known as Dragon Plus. Well, actually, I think nothing. Until I got your question, I was unaware of its existence. I have ceased to pay attention to Hasbro, the Wizards. I just don't give a damn what they're doing. I look at other products, some in more depth than others, but I don't care. And I mean to say that with insouciance rather than contempt. No, sometimes. Anyway, I ceased to care about Dragon Magazine after they turned it into a house organ and then just abruptly killed it off. Wasn't my Dragon Magazine anymore. This thing online certainly isn't my Dragon Magazine anymore. I mean, how can it be when the Wizards people are too damned ignorant to know how to pronounce the name of the land shark? I printed the pronunciation. I've only been giving the pronunciation out for how many years now that I've been back in the gaming industry, and they can't even figure out it's Boulay. And the sad thing about that is I saw a brilliant cartoon the other day. It was all about puns. And the only way the punchline, the payoff pun worked is if you had adopted their bullet, which, as we all know, is wrong. Dragon Plus? Who cares? I don't know. And I don't care. I really don't. I have a couple, 3 more adventures that I'm going to write that, of course, will be system neutral, as they all are. I have 2 or 3 more that I want to write before all my juices dry out. And other than that, we'll see what happens. I'm happy to collaborate with people. I'm happy to read people's manuscripts for them. I'm happy to edit people's manuscripts for them. And I do that for several friends throughout the industry. And I'm cool with that. All right. I thought a good friend of mine put this question down. If you read the post, you'll know who it is. All of you who didn't, I won't identify this person. but I will have a word with him when next I see him in person. All right. The DM secretly fudging a die result. For example, to avoid killing PC or halting the momentum of the action session, or let the dice roll where they may. I've done it all. I've fudged them for both reasons. And I've let it roll where it went. I share the conceit of many other dungeon masters that while I'm letting you spin the story, I still hold control over the outline. That said, we're having a great time and a really crappy die roll comes up. I don't even say it was a crappy die roll. I say, okay, give me a couple more. And so I avoid something if I think it's going to break up the flow and the fun that we're having. I look at a game that I'm running, any game that I'm running, as a certain period of time broken up by the necessary potty breaks and smoke breaks if there's smokers in the group. A certain given amount of time devoted to having fun. That's the way I look at it. And that's the way I try to treat it. If it's just a really rotten break, I might not let it happen, or I might not let it happen all the way, or fully or completely. And sometimes I've never fudged a roll against a player, but there have been times when players deserved the crappy roll they got. And I didn't let it change because in my hubris as a DM, I felt they deserved what they had, and it served the whole party. And as an object lesson, that was okay for them to see. And maybe that player would think twice before trying to do something enormously stupid and being absolutely convinced they could do it and still given more than a 50-50 chance and failed to get the roll. Well, so yeah, I have I've done it for I've fudged rolls. I've never fudged one against. I've never fudged a roll that hurt a player character. I have probably fudged that hurt the party abstractly, like made all the donkeys run away, or something came by and ate all their pack horses that they thought they had hidden, or something like that. Never though, it stabbed you after all. Nothing like that. Again, it depends. If the story is going along and it needs a punch and somebody does something dumb, oh well, there's the punch. And oftentimes players will supply the punch, the reignition of interest for you. You don't even have to craft it or contrive it. They'll do it for you. So yeah, I've fudged. I don't believe in. I think it probably goes back to Deathless Bob. I started fudging for Deathless Bob only after he'd finally lived. Now, I've told the story about Deathless Bob, the great young kid that played with us in college, who no matter where he was or what we were playing, I was always the guy. If there was a random death, it was Deathless Bob. Well, Deathless Bob finally won through a couple of, he won through Got a Guy Survive. Actually had enough to go from second to third level or something like that, because I let Deathless Bob keep coming back as like second level because he's trying to catch the guys that are moving ahead. Anyway, I think after 2 or 3, I might have actually fudged one for Deathless Bob, and I probably did it more because he was a 14 or 15-year-old boy that I wanted to see have fun playing the game. And I have fudged die rolls in that regard at conventions. I've not, believe it or not, with my TPK legend, my record, I have fudged more often for younger players because I wanted to let them feel that they succeeded in something. It's not the same as changing a grade when I was a teacher. You see the difference. Oh my. Okay. I'm going to read all this. Bear with me here for a minute. I just finished reading Bill Deer's book on the Dallas Egbert case. I know your opinion of Bill Deer and his retelling, and I by no means consider it irrefutable fact. I think you once mentioned that the Dallas bulletin boards were brought to you, and we were looking at them. And was there any time when you thought, oh, maybe this might be something, or this could be something, or this looks like this? In the book, Bill mentions that it was, in fact, a map, according to Dallas. Thoughts on this? Well, that's bullshit. There's my thought right there. And could you discuss your memories of the time in the case? All right, now, I'm glad you mentioned the time and case. It was a long time ago. We were asked to look at these things and analyze them and try to see if we could see an abstract map. So there were probably 700 times. Oh, this might be, because we're looking at bulletin boards that got tacks and staples in them. A couple of staples and a bunch of tacks and some push pin. To be god awful honest, I know there were different things that were made to stick in a cork board. And there was nothing that they were sticking to the cork board. So there were lots of times we thought, oh yeah, this could be these three cities in Michigan, or that could be an outline of Lake Superior, or we were trying to impose more detail on a very abstract, and of course we never did. And the fact that Bill Deer, I believe he's dead now and probably roasting in hell for all his lies if he believes in hell, said that Dallas said it was a map. That's bullshit. Dallas said to several other people that was just where he stuck them back in when he was taking down his papers. And we wasted all that time, and they wasted state patrol, state police wasted all that time driving that shit down to us overnight, and we wasted a day and a half or however long. It was a long time we spent on that. And so yeah, to answer the one question, yeah, hundreds of times. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Never could. And then we later figured. We said we don't think it's anything. If it's something, we can't find it. And of course, Bill Deer had to say it was, because he thought it was at the beginning, so he had to be right. He's full of bullshit. Of course, now he's dead, so the bullshit's all desiccated. Okay. Second to last question. When did you bring Darlene on staff, and what was the first work she did for TSR? Darlene was never on my staff. I'm going to tell you a story about Darlene, and I'm going to violate one of my principles about speaking unkindly of somebody that's dead, because it's the facts, the truth. And okay, the truth is always the truth. Darlene came to Lake Geneva with Mike Carr. They were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time, and Mike, being a supportive boyfriend, said, "Oh yeah, I'll beg Gary and TSR. I would love to see your artwork," because she was, drawn at the time. And they use lots of freelancers. I'm sure, I'm sure they'll give you a shot at least. So And most of what I'm going to tell you is told to me by Darlene just a few years ago, because I didn't know all this at the same time either. And I'm sure she'd give you more detail than I can on a couple of things. But anyway, anyway. So she took her portfolio into Dave Sutherland. And Dave Sutherland, and I didn't know this at the time. I'd only met this charming young, nice looking young lady that I'd been introduced to when Mike was in the building one day. And so she took her portfolio to Dave, and Dave said, absolutely not. He was very snotty, very sexist, very, you'd think he was a misogynist when he said that he didn't believe that any female artist could possibly draw a fantasy that would be believable. Yeah, think about that for a minute. All right, and that was it. He just absolutely shouted her out of the water. Don't bother trying again. Yada da da da. I didn't know any of this. I saw her stuff and said, "Hey, I'd like to use," and here I gotta rely on old age and fading memory, and maybe Darlene knows. I don't remember which piece was the first. She had a piece that I liked. Hey, I'd like to run this. Here's what I'll pay you. Oh, sure, I'd be glad to. Yes, certainly. And then she drew me some other stuff. She was a freelancer. She was a commission artist. Hey, I need a piece this big with this topic in it or this subject in it. And I always liked what she gave me. Gary saw it. He liked it. Hey, who's this artist? Told him. They met, they talked. I'm not sure exactly. Again, Darlene can give you this information. Of course, she ended up going on to do the unicorn. She went on. Gary loved her work so much that he said, "We're going to use her." And I later found out that because of that, and because I was using her when David Sutherland said he wouldn't, that was the day that the art department was instructed not to do anything for periodicals, even on their own free time. That was his little shitty way of getting back at me. Well, Tom Wom, God bless him, said, Tim brought me up here, and Tim and I have been friends since college, and if I want to do something for Tim, I'm going to continue. And he did, of course. We did green things and, snits and all that. And Tramp basically told him the same thing. Hey, Tim brought me in here with Wormy, then you hired me away, and I'm still going to do Wormy. And I paid him for Wormy, which is why he thought he owned the rights, and he was later screwed out of them. But in any event, he told Sutherland that I'm going to do, if I want to do something for Tim, I'm going to do it, and you can't make me not, because I never signed anything. So that's how that all came up. Gary liked her stuff. She did the iconic unicorn and so much other great stuff in AD&D. And then went on to do the Greyhawk maps that are an iconic map style all her own that many have emulated and few have succeeded in duplicating. And so that's how Darlene got in the back door at TSR. And then, of course, everything since then, she's done on strength of her talent. She's just one of many that, I discovered that ended up working for TSR. I found him as a freelancer, and then Gary or somebody down at the other building decided they liked their stuff, and so they spirited them away from me. Last question. This is a good one. Fitting to end on. Please talk about game balance in OD&D and AD&D with regards to game design classes and adventure encounters. I've seen people making the claim that early D&D versions did not regard game balance as an issue, or that some elements were purposely imbalanced. Okay, is game balance something you and Gary can discuss? Oh yeah, lots of times. For instance, why are wizards as weak as they are? Because if they weren't, they would run roughshod over the campaign within weeks. Think about it. If wizards came on and they could use swords and throw spells, okay, and got the same hit dice. Holy cow. Now you're talking about a guy from a paperback. All right. So game balance, actually, with a few notable exceptions, like as mentioned earlier in this broadcast, better instructions on how to use those charts and tables, because they whacked out a game balance. And if that's what they're looking at, then saying there wasn't any, well, they got a good argument, because those tables sure as hell didn't have much. But yeah, we talked about game balance a lot. It's part of why I won the argument on Magic Missile. The wizard had, the low-level puke wizard had to have something that would work, whether he was trying to light a trash basket or knock off that troll running around, or ogre, whatever, with one hit point left. At least he was going to get one. All right, 1 to 3, always hit. Before that time, it was grossly unbalanced. It was like a mortar barrage from a whole mortar section coming in, or nothing at all. So that was a method of balancing. Spells were very carefully, when we added spells in the supplements, they were very carefully vetted as to what level they would come in at, and how, therefore, how powerful are they, and who should be able to throw them. And we talked about if you wanted a high level spell, but you guys weren't big enough yet, that's what scrolls are for. And if they were able to read them, yada, da, da, da. Being able to read them or not being able to read them, that was a method of balance. And now we got better at balance, but balance was always there, always. The first supplement I did, Blackmore, we took Steve Marsh's Sahagin, and we tweaked them here and we tweaked them there to what we felt. And to be honest, and to be fair to Steve, they didn't require a lot of tweaking, but we tweaked those. The only thing in that book that didn't get tweaked in terms of balance was the structure and infrastructure of Dave's Temple of the Frog, because that was his after all. And that was the whole purpose of printing it, is showing you how to do a temple and an infrastructure and all that, and build it in your campaign. So in that regard, balance was very important. We started preaching about balance in the supplements. We started toning things down. We started we started balancing the characters by if one of them was too strong, well, in the early days, we'd bring the others up or give them compensatory skills and ability. If we hadn't balanced, there would have been character types that nobody would have wanted to play. So all of that was part of the recipe. It's good to know that you need butter in the recipe. How much butter is the thing? Not enough, it's going to be dry. Too much, it's going to be gooey. Not the gooey butter's not necessarily bad, but you get my drift. If you're making cookies, you don't want to have to be eating them on a fork. Purposely imbalanced, yes. We made the wizard stayed weaker for the reason that wizards would run amok and run and ruin and rule everything if you didn't. Fighters were given limitations, and everybody had limits placed on them. We tried to make those limits fair, and we tried to use those limits as a balancing act. Druids were introduced almost intact by Dennis's manuscript. They were just about intact. We didn't tweak those because it was so hard to become a druid that we felt that, at the time, rather unrealistically, we felt that there would be so few people that would qualify to be a druid that we didn't need to tweak it, because once you qualified, you should be that bad dude. I mean, he's tough. He's rough when he's, makes good levels. Up around 7th, 8th, 9th level in OD&D, a druid was a tough dude. Didn't want to mess with him. And if he had a bag of mice, you were in trouble. Because if you can speak with animals, you get those mice to do anything for you. So no, I think the people that think there was imbalance, no, we strove long and hard to keep it in balance. It's hard to describe those, and this is why I couldn't write a book about it. It's hard to describe those early days when we were trying to control the game. We didn't want it spinning out into sexual perversions and girdles of sex change and sexual orientation. And, we didn't want it spinning out there. We didn't want it spinning off into some spell point system. We were trying to just nudge along the edge, keep the cattle herd together, just nudge along the edge and not let the extremes go and let it find itself. And it eventually did. I believe our technique worked. Took a while, but we had a brand new product and a brand new market, and people are brand new to it, and it came around. So yeah, absolutely, we thought we were balancing. Now, whether or not we got better at it later, that's up to you to say, but I'm not worried. Went and saw The Incredibles. Oh yeah, that's the end. Went and saw The Incredibles. Great, wonderful film again. And next week I'm going to go see the second Ant-Man with Jim Wampler. We're waiting for that one. Hey, Ant-Man. And I'm going to see the new Jurassic World. I saw the first two, ignored the next two. But this one, when I saw the plesiosaur coming out of the surf to eat the surfer, I said, I got to see this one. So on that note, I'm going to say adios from the Curmudgeon. And again, once more, if you're not a subscriber, please do that. And anything you want, me to prattle on about, that's what the comments are for at the end of this thing. So how about leaving a comment? And then I don't have to embarrass myself on Facebook and say, hey, what do you want me to talk about? Because I'm not just going to go on here and say, I think the world needs to know my opinion on. That's not why I do this. The world doesn't need to know my opinion on. Doesn't need it. If they want it, I'll give it. I don't believe that they need it. I don't think I'm that special. Adieu.